Good morning, everyone. Yay. Welcome to MLUC's 2024 Annual Congregational Meeting. We have a full agenda. It's a beautiful day. We want to get it completed on time. That's my job, so bear with me if I keep pushing people to complete it on time. And so without further ado, the meeting is now called to order. Under our bylaws, we need a quorum of 60 members assembled, including absentee ballots, and I'm pleased to report there are 113 members present with 24 absentee ballots. So we have a quorum. We'll proceed to our first order of business. It was the Senior Minister's Report, which will be presented by our own Reverend Dr. John Morehouse, who is Senior Minister of our Developmental Ministry.
Thank you, Gail, and thank you all for being here. At the heart of our movement is this understanding of participative democracy, which is really what a congregational church such as ours is really all about, so I really appreciate you being here. It's been a very good year for us. As you can tell, on Sundays, we've really filled the place. Our attendance is at, I don't know if it's an all-time high, but it's certainly very high. And if we were in a more growth mode at this point, I would be saying, it's time for a second service. We're not going to do that. We're not. We're well over 85%, which is considered sort of the threshold. It's been productive both for myself and for Frances, who wishes she could be here with you, because she has felt the energy, as I have, of all of you, providing so much love and support, both to us and to the congregation. We have just adored living in the parsonage next door. Didn't think I'd ever be able to say that about any next door to the church idea, but this one has really turned out well, and hopefully we'll have some more. If you haven't seen it since it's being remodeled, we'll have some more opportunities to do that in the fall, because you really should see it. It's really quite amazing. I want to thank my board of trustees, our board of trustees, absolutely amazing group of people. I've loved doing shared ministry with them. We have been working on developmental goals, which were decided before I came, and I just want to run by them quickly because I think they're important for you to remember. A lot of this is in my written annual report, which I encourage you to read. The first and probably the most important has been to develop a shared ministry, and I've talked about this from the pulpit and elsewhere. It's very important for us, for me and for you, to have the ministry and the authority of that ministry shared with all of our leaders and ultimately with all of you. You've had a different model of senior ministry in the past. I'm trying to create a new model, help you create a new model, and I've been working very closely with the board. There isn't a major decision that including all the staffing changes, that I don't run by the board of trustees. I'm pointing to Barbara because she's sort of the board of trustees right here, right now. So that's actually been going well, and there'll be more opportunity to share in our ministry. We're hoping to improve our membership systems. And this is a time for, I'll shout her out later, but I want to thank Madeline Seiko for all that she's done. She's retiring this month, and she got us from one system towards another one, and we'll figure out what that is over the summer and into the fall, but let's give a round of applause to Madeline. There she is. We're working on developing a culture of inclusion, and today's service, I think, was a good example of that with the transgender support that we're providing both in the community and in our movement. We are one of the leading congregations that's working on this issue. We've done very well, and I think we'll do a lot more. Racism and white supremacy culture are equally difficult, and we will be dealing with those. It feeds into our next goal, which is to develop more of a public presence. I am working on that with some people. We're doing some strategic thinking around that. Stay tuned for more of that next year. And then, of course, the one that is often very difficult is to foster more generational transition. I have said to you from the pulpit and elsewhere that just because you're all elders doesn't mean we're headed for an iceberg. I actually think it's our greatest gift. And I appreciate that you being here and putting as much years and love and the time into the congregation to be ready now to move it along into the next generation. There are many generations that we look for in a generational shift. Not all of them just young families. Of course, those are very vital to our future, but also folks who are late middle age or nearly newly retired. They are a very important demographic, if you will, for a healthy church. So I'm looking at all of those. We're making a lot of progress. We have a lot more work to do, which is why this is a longer ministry than an interim. And I'm hoping that in the next several years, you'll begin to see even more changes. With your help, I think we'll get there. Let me thank the staff particularly, because it's been a lot of change in staff, so I'm going to name them, and if they're in the room, if they would stand up. Dawn Starr, I think you're in here somewhere. There you are in the back. Dawn Starr and I have been working closely together on developing a faith program that both teaches as well as inspires, and her work, my work, particularly in multi-generational worship, has really been quite something, and we're going to see a lot more of that next year. I know she's not here today, and she's not supposed to be here today, but I would be remiss if I didn't call out Caroline Bright, our intern minister, for many of the great decisions, and some of them you didn't like, but there they are. She brought a perspective that was refreshing, if sometimes a bit fast-paced for us. But Caroline will be sorely missed, and we know that she will do great things. If you vote to ordain her today, she will be ordained in this congregation in September. David Brown, our new music director, is here. It's still kind of hard for me to imagine that time when I would only been here for a few weeks and then Vincent died suddenly, and the shock and grief was so palatable here. We wondered how we were going to go on. No one will ever replace Vincent, but I will say that Vincent's legacy lives on in David, and it's really wonderful to have him with us. Joe Lipton has been serving as our interim director of finance when Mark Rizzo left, and I don't think Joe's here, but I don't see him in the room. But I do want you to make sure that you thank him for this transition. All of that's to say, Griselda, who was our executive administrator, our office administrator, has been promoted to congregational administrator. Now that in a minute. She's in the back then. That may not sound like much, but it's huge. She has basically taken over most of the job she had before and most of the director of operations job. She does it with sincerity, diligence, and an efficiency that blows my mind. Many of you have met her, you've talked to her. She's wonderful to be around. It's just a pleasure to come into work. There was a time there when all our doors were closed during a workday. All our doors are open now, and Griselda is part of that inspiration, so it's wonderful to have her with us. Jay Wiley and his tech team in the back there. All of this happens that you see, and those of you who watch online, you see it because they're there. Henry Zink is our new youth coordinator, and this has been his first year. Henry? And then behind the scenes, what you don't often see, is Bill Mullen, who is our accountant. Bill, are you in the room somewhere? There you are in the back. And our wonderful facilities team, Ron, Eddie, and Tom. I can't imagine this church without the three of them. Out of the blue, when our wonderful Ann Bear Clark retired in April, which of course we want to remember all the good work she did. She came to the job during COVID, that's like not an easy thing to do. And she left us with this work, this ministry we needed to do, and we're sort of trying to reinvent it now. Well, if I believe more in a providential God, I would say that Bill Cluley was sent to us, the Reverend Dr. Bill Cluley, and is offered as a volunteer to be our interim minister of congregational care. So let's give it up for Bill. And then again, I want to thank Madeline for everything that she did, and wishing you the very best. And there's a luncheon with the staff. Don't forget that, okay? So that's coming up. All right, give her another round of applause. Thank you all. All right, one last thing. It is my personal practice to recognize the outgoing president of the Board of Trustees for work well done. And what I have done over these 30-some years, I have always given a piece of art, because I think being the president of a congregation is an art project. You got to be creative, you got to be flexible, you got to know how to do it. We've been very fortunate through tough times and now through better times to have Yasera as that person, and I have this to offer you. This piece is called Freedom in the Walls, and it was done by my artist daughter Fiona, who showed here in May and June, whenever it was. This is actually just a copy. The original is at Fiona's house. She has signed it. Apparently she doesn't sign her artwork, so I had to have her go back and sign all this artwork. And it's being framed. So this is just a photocopy, but we thought it spoke to the breadth that you give and the room you give for all the work you've done. So take this with you as a placeholder till the real painting shows up, and thank you from all of us. And thus concludes my report.
Thank you, Rev. John. We'll now proceed to our next order of business, presentation of the trustees' report by Barbara Colton, the trustees' current vice president. Barbara will be available after the meeting if you have questions about the trustees' report.
So, good afternoon. So I want to say what he said. Thank you for, this has been quite a year. There's been amazing changes, a lot of new energy and excitement through this congregation. And I'd have to summarize the trustee report as a single sentence. I think we've had a great first year of our developmental ministry. So let's give ourselves a round of applause. I know a lot of us had trepidations as we started to go into a developmental ministry. What that meant, oh, that must mean there's something wrong with us. I think it's gone really well. It's been busy. I have to say the changes have been, many of them have been small, and you may not have noticed them yet, and some of them have been big. The big ones have been the major renovation of the parsonage, which was sorely needed, and I echo Reverend John's comment that if you haven't seen what Francis Morehouse has done to the parsonage, I hope you'll take the chance the next time they have an open event there to take a look. There's been a lot of work to try to invite more participation. That's one of the big parts of what we've been doing this year, is trying to get people to feel invited and be a part of the process. We held this spring the visioning sessions and the Disrupt Church sessions as part of that, engaging all of us in the thinking about how we re-energize our ministries and move us forward to where we need to take our church. These are just the beginnings, but it's been wonderful to have so many people participate and be engaged and passionately looking for us to move forward on a number of fronts, from social justice, membership, across the board. So we encourage that and want to have more of that. We've had new committees started, a number of you have joined in, new music ensembles. It's great to see Betsy's Bells back and younger generations up on the chancel during worship services. From changing the blinds, I want to shout out to our interiors team for, doing the work to improve and make our congregation feel better. The new blinds are in the McGinnis room and the fireside room, and soon will be here as well. We've been working on transparency. I mean, one of the things is open up not just the participation in, but communication out to the congregation. So we had our mid-year town hall, and as part of that effort to kind of really communicate during the middle of the year. And I hope some of you have taken a look at the annual report that came out last week, as also an opportunity for everyone in the congregation to sort of share what the progress has been this year. This is the first. I don't know, Rich, when was the last time we did one of these? But it was so long ago, nobody remembers. And this will be part of an annual process going forward. So I just want to say I'm excited about this beginning again for the new year, and welcome all to participate and engage. We want to get this new membership directory out. So anyone has not had a chance to opt in or opt out, if that's your preference, and get your picture taken, we're going to make a major campaign through the summer to try to get that happening. There's going to be work to strengthen I know there's work underway that started on our small group ministry to encourage more participation and make the program even stronger. And that's what we're trying to do, is re-energize our ministry, and that's mostly what we've been focusing on this year. We'll be setting some annual priorities for this upcoming year, and more specific to what John has laid out, and really running that through the ministry groups to really have clarity and everybody knows really what we're trying to aim for, all tied into our mission of the church. So I hope you'll remain flexible, willing to take a little risk, be forgiving, be supportive of each other, and continue every Sunday to welcome and make our visitors feel that they are really welcome here at our church. It's important. So that's all I wanted to say on the trustees. You can take a look at the annual report. I think pretty much the work that has been happening all year is summarized in that annual report. But I wanted to take a moment to recognize a few wonderful leaders in our church for their work this year. Starting with the board, and I don't know if these people are all here today. Joe Lipman, are you here? No? All right. Well, I'm sure everyone knows, but just in case, Joe has served as our treasurer on and off for what I hear nearly 20 years. As treasurer, he's worked with and supported many boards, committees, leaders, different ministers, and staff. He knows our history and has much institutional knowledge and will continue to be invaluable to our church. This year, Joe served as our treasurer and as a board member, and now he supports, as John mentioned, as interim finance director. On behalf of the board, I would like to thank Joe for all his dedication and time devoted to the church over the years and the many ways he has made and still makes a difference in our church. So let's give Joe a round of applause. At the end of June, Marlise Singh will be finishing her term on the board. Marlise has served as vice president last year and has continued to share insights, serving on the Legacy and Endowment Committee this year. And I want to say a thank you to Marlise for her service on the board and for now stepping up to serve as our treasurer. Mark Hurl. Mark will be finishing his 3 years on the board at the end of this month. He's been the board secretary this year, and during his time on the board, he's been instrumental in projects including a secret Project Fortify, the board manual Massive Reorganization, no small task, and the Congregational Annual Report, which hopefully you have all had a chance to take a look at. So thank you, Mark. Thank you. Barbara Welsh. Hi, Barbara. This was Barbara's, correct me if I'm wrong, but Barbara's third time serving on the Board of Trustees, correct? Yes. She must love being on the board. She stepped in mid-year last year to take a vacant board seat and has contributed her wisdom and knowledge of our church and church history on important matters for the church. She's also warmed our board meetings with her wonderful chalice lightings and gracious board meeting evaluations. We wish you well, Barbara, in your new role in leading the memorial service team. Thank you. And then there's Yasara. Again, I have to say, you know, Yasara has served on the board, as John mentioned, for the past 4 years. She's been president for 2 years. Just thinking of that, it's exhausting. She served all through COVID, and as we emerged out of COVID, and we emerged slowly out of COVID. She worked with, I think it is 4 different ministers during her term, which requires agility because you have to adapt to working with different folks and different ways of doing things. I'd say that no 2 years were alike. And Yasara has been the youngest member on the board and the youngest president of the board for our church. So she has been a trailblazer in the generational transfer, I guess. Yasara truly cares about our church and has devoted herself in countless ways. She's not afraid to step in to help out in an area when no one else has, and she has in so many ways. On behalf of the board, I want to thank you, Yasara, for all that you have done, visibly and behind the scenes, to support the church. I hope you will take this summer to recharge, get some rest, and come back in and continue to support us in many ways. And she's shaking her head. So this developmental ministry is not over, so we need your help. So thank you, Yasara. I'd like to also recognize the leadership of our nominating committee, Joanne Rose and Rick Jors. I see Joanne here. Is Rick here? Yeah. Joanne and Rick worked very hard. I think you made the whole team work really hard this year. They were very conscientious co-chairs of the nominating committee. And as a result of their hard work, they were in a position to put forward the nominees for the board and NomCom well ahead of this annual meeting, probably well ahead of any other nominating committee so far. So thank you. I'd also want to take a moment to recognize and thank Ron Rose. Ron has been the chair of the endowment committee for 6 going on 12 years now, 6 years. And he's stepping down this year as chair of the Legacy and Endowment Committee. He served 2 terms, basically also stepping up when church leadership was needed to stay on that additional term. and take on the important work of ensuring taking on the important work of aligning the endowment investments with our values. There's been a lot of good work that was done during Ron's term. So I'd like to also make a special recognition of Ron. So. We know how much time, energy, and love all of you have put into the ministry here, and we're so grateful for all the ways that you help support and keep our community thriving. So thank you. Look forward to the new year. Thank you.
Oops, sorry. Thank you, Barbara. We'll now proceed to our next order of business, presentation of MLUC's budget for the fiscal year 2024-25 by MLUC's current treasurer, Marlise Singh. A copy of the budget being presented was mailed or emailed to all members with the notice of the annual meeting. After her review, there'll be an opportunity for questions and discussion with both Marlise and Barbara Colton before we proceed to a vote on the 2024-25 budget.
Good afternoon. Let's talk about the proposed budget for the coming fiscal year. I'm really excited about that. This budget is very similar to the one we've had for the current year. Even the total amount that the board is planning to spend is pretty much the same as this year, but there are differences. There are a couple of initiatives that the board thinks are really important for our developmental work. That's right. So I want to go through all these special initiatives first before we look at the overall numbers. So there are three areas. One is staffing, which you see up there, and there's also ministry and building and grounds. Let's start with the staffing changes. So these 4 positions that you see up there have been changed from part-time to full-time because we feel that they are really important for us to have success in our developmental goals. As Reverend John said, David Brown has been our full-time music director for a while now, and you have all seen how the additional time that he has and his very own energy and enthusiasm have really led the choir to grow and grow in numbers and also grow in the excitement for the work they do. We also have a community orchestra now. We have revived the multi-generational choir, and we have section leaders that help the choir study more demanding works. So from our perspective, the music program is really up and running to make services more exciting for all of us here and for any future demographics that we hope to attract. And you've already also heard about Griselda taking on new responsibilities as congregational administrator. She is now doing financial work like payroll and administering the Breeze database. And she is working very closely with the stewardship team. I just want to mention that she has an MBA, and we are really fortunate to have somebody so qualified and hardworking and ready for new challenges right in-house here when we needed her. Congregational chair. As Reverend John already said, we are grateful that we have the Reverend Dr. Bill Cluley stepping in when we really needed to fill the gap that Ann Bear Clark had left. Reverend Bill is working with lay leaders and volunteers to develop a new team approach to and a new caring program so that we can fulfill all the caring needs in the congregation, starting with pastoral care. And this approach, this work, is helping us to define what exactly we are going to do with this position. I want to add here that the board is generally in the process of taking a deep look at how we are using staff and resources here at MLUC. And as part of that process, our interim finance director, Joe Lipton, and the finance committee are also reassessing the responsibilities of the position of the director of finance and operations, both in terms of the financial management and the maintenance of the building and grounds. They will give you an update on that reassessment soon. The next position there is communications manager, now going to be full-time. And we are happy to say that we are in the process of recruiting for that position. Communications is just going to be so important to the work of MLUC at this time when we are trying to become more connected with each other and also reaching out to the communities surrounding us. And while we are recruiting, we have help from our summer communications intern. He is part-time. He is also already here on staff. His name is Daniel Epley, and he is a UU from media and a graduate student at Westchester University. He is working with Griselda on all of our social media posts. Overall, the budget for personnel for next year is going to be $788,000, and that represents about 3/4 of the total budget. The salaries in that budget include a cost of living adjustment of 3% for existing staff, and all of the positions follow the UUA's fair compensation guidelines. Okay. And then we have some initiatives that are not related to staffing. Well, related, but in the worship area, you can see, since we are putting a lot of emphasis on the music ministry, we are also putting some extra funding into that area, a music budget of $16,600, and that is a 200% increase about what we have right now. We also have funding for new ministry initiatives of up to $30,000 for this year, and we don't know exactly yet what those will be. That is room for us to exercise our creativity, to move many of our ministries forward, and why don't you all start thinking of what you would like to see? A lot of the ideas might come from the visioning sessions that we have run already. And the last item on that list is something that we have heard many requests for from members of the congregation, an extra $8,500 to do landscaping in the grounds and to do regular interior deep cleaning of the church. There were just too many complaints that it's just not nice and clean here, so we are going to take care of that. Okay, so now that we have covered the special initiatives this year, let's look at all of the totals. The total for revenue is really based on our estimate of the total pledge income. And this estimate for the coming year is right now $645,000. The number of pledge responses during the annual fund drive was lower than expected and lower than previous years. To date, we have received 179 pledges, and they represent about $590,000. By comparison, for this current year, we have received 226 pledges. So we are hoping that in the near future, a whole lot more pledges are coming in. You can do that online or you can call the office. Just keep them coming. Every year in the budgeting process, estimating what our total pledge income is going to be, that's the first step that we start from. And naturally, there's some uncertainty about making that estimate. And you can see that the sooner we receive pledges, the better we can estimate and build a budget that is really based on reality. So this is why we all keep nagging everyone to pledge soon, because it helps us make a better budget. In addition to the pledges, there are our regular other forms of income, the donations we receive, the offerings we collect in the weekly services, the rental income, the auction. Our auction last year brought in a record amount of $50,000. We hope that we can do that again. And in addition to all of those kinds of income, we are also planning, as we do every year, to use some of the money in our endowment funds and reserves. That includes a $72,000 withdrawal from the endowment fund. That's the normal 5% that we use for operations. There is an $1,800 withdrawal from the PETSAW fund, which is for counseling that we have started to do together with Arrive Therapy. We are also planning to withdraw $40,000 from the capital reserve for much needed maintenance and improvements. You may have heard that this is the year when we are finally paving the parking lot. That's going to be a very big and expensive project. And then we are going to withdraw up to $30,000 from our brand new innovation fund for the new ministry initiatives that I mentioned already. And that gives us this total of just over $1 million in income. On the expense side, our spending is expected to be pretty much the same as this year, except for the special initiatives that I mentioned so far. And there is one more exception that you might have seen in the executive summary to the budget. We have asked the UUA to give us a 50% discount on our contribution to the annual program fund this year. The negotiation for that is still going on, and the board hopes that we will be able to honor the full pledge amount and make our full payment later in the year. And that leads us to the bottom line, which is a deficit of $60,000. And in order to speak about that, let me go a few years back and tell you how it was like when we came out of COVID. And that was financially also that first shock of being in lockdown and people not coming here made us concerned of how we were going to do financially. And when we shared that with the congregation, everybody really stepped up and came through for us. And we were able to assemble a cash reserve at that time that came out to about 5 times the monthly expenses that we have here. And that is a very solid cash reserve. So then once we were over those years, we had made the decision, if you remember, for the last year and this current year, so for 2 years in a row, to have a budget with a deficit of about $100,000 each year so that we could invest extra money in growth. And we were going to use part of that big cash reserve to get that process started. So last year, we used about $110,000 of that cash reserve. And this year, we had in the budget planned again another $100,000. But it looks to us now, where we're almost at the end of the church year, it looks to us that we are not going to have that deficit. We hope we might be break even, or at a minimum, it looks like the deficit is going to be very small. And as such, we have a big chunk of that cash that we wanted to invest. We still have it, and it is going to cover this entire deficit in the coming year. So at the end of that process, once we are through that budget, we will return to our target of having 3 months of expenses in our cash reserves going forward. Okay. I think I'm ready for questions.
So there'll be an opportunity for questions, but first I will entertain a motion to approve the budget as submitted, after which we'll open the floor for discussion and questions on the motion to approve. Okay. Is there a second? Okay. So the motion is to approve the budget for 2024-25 fiscal year for MLUC. We're now going to take for 10 minutes of questions and discussion about the budget before proceeding to vote on the pending motion. If you want to raise your hand, we'll acknowledge you. And Barbara and Marlise will take any questions. Carrie?
Thank you. I'm so excited that we're going to have a full-time communications manager. I think that's great. I have 2 quick questions about that. One, you mentioned we're recruiting. Is there a job ad that we could share with our networks?
I believe the job has already been, Griselda, wasn't it distributed out to the congregation already, posted? Yeah, it's posted on the
Perfect,
website.
thank you.
Yeah.
And my other question is, given this great new emphasis on communication, why is the advertising budget still so low?
The advertising, I guess you're referring to the line item advertising that's in the budget. And that advertising means advertising for open positions. It's not us marketing what we do, but it's just advertising new positions, so that's naturally small.
Sorry, quick follow-up. Is there money somewhere in the budget for purchasing ads about our church? If this new communications manager says, oh, we should have a Facebook ad about this cool thing we're doing, is there money for that?
Well, that advertising budget is a general advertising. It does include advertising for positions, and it is a small amount in terms of advertising, but we have not earmarked specific dollars. We may move money around as we need to based on how the communications program goes. There are some ideas that we've been kicking around about how we're going to really do advertising in a very different way. So don't assume that if we're not just buying it, that there aren't other things going to be happening on the communication side. So hang tight. You'll be on the board. You'll hear more.
But don't jinx me.
Hi, I'm Diane Kiker, and I apologize that I couldn't attend the discussion of the budget previously. I am really saddened by the cut in the funds for the UUA. The UUA has been here for us over thorny times over the years, and we have, if memory serves, a long history of being an honor congregation, contributing our fair share. And it particularly bothers me that now that we have a woman of color leading the UUA, that we are not stepping up to support fully the way we should, and the way we should as the largest congregation in Pennsylvania. So I just wanted to say how sad that makes me, and I hope we can make it a priority to try and get that up to what it should be.
I think we've been through a similar situation a couple of years back, I don't know, 5-10 years back, where we also thought, we might take a discount because things were tight. And then by the time the spring rolled around, we made our full payment, and we've been an honor congregation, since forever, and we want to work as hard as we can to keep that status.
I have two questions. I want to follow up on Diane's question about the UUA. I also am sad about that, especially since they've done so much to support us in the last 3 or 4 years to find 2 ministers. I think they've done a lot for us. And so as a follow-up to that, I wonder what the triggers will be for you to decide to send more money to UUA. And my second question is, I'm really excited about all the new staff that you've talked about today. I think that's going to make a marvelous improvement in the church. And so I wonder how we're going to measure that improvement. Are there particular goals that these new staff members have that are written down somewhere that the congregation could look at and say, yeah, they were supposed to do these 5 things, and a year or so from now say, yeah, these things have been accomplished or are moving forward?
Well, I mentioned earlier, Jan, that we'll, be defining these annual priorities, and that will ripple through to priorities to the ministry groups, but also to the staff and all of the different teams, so that there are goals for all of us to follow, and that'll be part of the way to make sure we're all focusing on the mission of the church. But as of this point, do we have those laid out specifically just for the staff? That's a work in progress that the board is working on, and I think John wants to add to that. So.
Yeah, so for the first time in a long time, I understand, I'm instituting this month an annual review process, which apparently we haven't done, which is just good practices. So part of the way I do annual reviews, they're more about goal setting. Now, those are not goals I'm going to share with the congregation, so you don't get to measure them. But I will be measuring them, and they will align with the goals that the board has set with me for the year. So they'll be supporting our ministry as we move forward, and then internally, I'm working with the staff people to help them achieve those goals, as well as other personal growth goals. So we do have a process in place. This is really the start of that. You have to have a baseline, and this year is going to be the baseline, and then we'll see where we go from there.
I can't say that we'll have a better sense as the year goes forward. I think the other thing, and honestly, we're in a position where we have to I have to pursue this cut in the UUA because we just don't have the pledge and the funding that we need to support the operations of the church, and that's the bottom line. So when Marlise was talking about the fact that we have X number of 179 as the date for the pledges to date, it's a considerably lower number than we've had the last 2 years. And those who haven't pledged, you're part of this. This is a covenanted community. Covenant means we've committed to support this community, and certainly there are times where it's difficult for people to do that for various personal reasons financially. But it's important that everybody understand that what we're able to do and invest in terms of staff and resources and programming is largely dependent on the pledging that comes from members here in this congregation. So it isn't that the board is holding money in any way. It is really, we are trying to leverage the resources that we've built up over years and we've saved or we've invested in to be able to help support and fill in the gap that we currently have with our pledging. And unfortunately, even with all of that, we still needed to look at the UUA budget and have put that in as a starting for the budget, but we're hoping and going to make every effort we can to honor that because we have done that for over 25 years. So.
I'm Kathy Hirsch, and I'm hoping that you can speak more about about the money that is being allocated for counseling, and to give a little bit of transparency around that, because that seems to me to be something completely different. I've been here at least 25 years, and I've never, personal individual counseling. And it seems that, if I recall, when it was presented to the congregation, it was already a done deal, the decision was made, and maybe I'm wrong about that, but that was my first, when I read about it, that this was happening, it seemed that the decision had been made. So I'm just hoping you can provide some more transparency around that.
This is really more like a history lesson. The money that comes, that we are using for counseling, is money in the PETSAW fund. It is part of the endowment. It is a restricted fund in the endowment. And that money was originally given to us 10 years ago, maybe. And for this very purpose, to use it within the framework of the church, use it for families that could not afford counseling for the family or the children in the family that needed it very much. So we are not really making a decision to use money for counseling. That is the reason that it was given for, so we are applying it to that restricted purpose.
Yeah, the money that for the counseling is not really part of the budget in a sense. The money doesn't come from the operations, as Marley said. We have this separate fund that's restricted, been set up, and we had a team under the leadership, I think, of Dawn Starr that did the research to look at, because we hadn't used the fund. It had been sitting there, and we hadn't been using it for the purpose for which it was established. So a team was set up this year to do the work of researching to see how best to use the funds. And they recommended to the board a group called Arrived Therapy that does provide counseling for families who are where there may be a need for some type of counseling for the families. And in particular, they do a lot of work with LGBTQ families. And so the decision was, the recommendation came to the board, and the board approved an $1,800 donation to Arrive Therapy. And we've put in the budget again an expectation of $1,800 from this particular fund to support perhaps ongoing work with them.
Are the recipients church members, or is it the larger community?
They will be families selected by Arrived Therapy because they are in a better position than we are to make the determination of the needs of the families. So.
Will this new communications person have any oversight in terms of management or coordination of social action initiatives?
Well, communications will be responsible, hopefully, with supporting the entire church. So the overall messaging internally and working with the different ministry groups to help get their messaging out. So yes, this is a full-time position. Obviously, there's a lot of pieces and have to be organized, et cetera, and set up. But as there are programs, events happening, this individual will be responsible developing communications and strategy to help to get that message out.
Hello, this is John Smith. Given the shortfall in the pledging, I wonder if the board has undertaken any analysis of the reasons and what you intend to do about it.
We have, yes, we've looked at the pledging. We know who has not pledged. We have been reaching out to families, those to encourage people to pledge. We've lost some members, who've passed, who've been large contributors to the church. We have, and not just this year, but over time, and that's part of the demographic reality of where we're at. We have younger members who are, it's difficult financial times for them, and that also can impact pledging. And we have people who just are slow to pledge, honestly. There's a bit of that. As a church, and then I think there's also among some families this misunderstanding of what pledging is and what it means, and we see that in many ways. So there's some education that we're going to be doing more of. We're also looking at different ways of raising funds outside of pledging. So we will be introducing some other fundraising initiatives this year and experimenting and see if that will help. Because not everybody, some people are more comfortable giving one-off here and there. Some people are comfortable with this pledging concept, but not everybody seems to be responsive to pledging. And we know some people like to give when there's like an auction in different ways. So people have different ways of giving, and we're going to be opening that up. And you want to add something, John?
I just want to say that that sort of generalized accounting of why we have this problem is fine. But in order to really deal with it, I hope that the board will adopt a very specific set of strategies and let us know what you're doing.
Yeah.
Okay, so percentage of income from pledging across the UUA and across congregationally based systems, UCC, Northern Baptist, Southern Baptist, that number is going down. Younger generations don't understand pledging, in fact, don't want to participate in that way. That doesn't mean it's the end of the world. It just means at 70-some%, you're doing better than most congregations in the UUA. Most are in the 60s. And so the way that congregations are making up the difference, yes, there's education, and yes, this is still, the bread and butter of who we are, is we're finding other ways to fund. The model we're using is a pretty old model, and I'm always looking at other ways that this is done. I've spent part of my time in England talking with a congregation that does this. So we're going to have to be a little more creative, and we'll have to experiment with different styles of fundraising. Not all of it will be internal. So we're part of a larger trend here, unfortunately. It's not an excuse, it's just part of the explanation. We still have folks that we want to contact, but I thought I would add that in there.
And I want to add my 2 cents worth. Overall, it has been our strategy for the last 2 years now and going forward through the developmental ministry that we are focused on growing. And so all the extra money, these deficits that we spend, are an investment in growth through all the various initiatives that we're doing in ministry. And the plan really is that once this growth kicks in, that the income will grow with it.
I would just note that our time allotted for this discussion is being exceeded. Is there any further discussion, or should we call the question? Call the question, okay. In preparation for the vote, we're going to do it a little differently this year, everyone. We're going to raise our right hands. So we have a visual vote instead of the aye, nay approach we've used before. That's consistent with Robert's rules, and it gives us a more precise measure. So I'm going to ask you to, so it's moved and seconded that MLUC's budget for the fiscal year 2024-25 be approved as presented and mailed or emailed to all members. Those in favor of the motion to approve the budget, please raise your right hand. Thank you. You can lower your hands. Those opposed to the motion to approve the budget, please hold up your right hand. Thank you. You may lower your hand. The ayes have it. The motion is adopted. MLUC's budget for the fiscal year 2024-25 is approved as presented and mailed or emailed to all members. Thank you. We will now proceed to the next order of business, the nominating committee's review by its co-chair, Joanne Rose.
Hello, I'm Joanne Rose, and together with Rick Jors, we have co-chaired the nominating committee this year. We are completing our third year, and it's our final year on this committee. I'd like to acknowledge the nominating committee and thank them for their hard work. So, as I call your name, please stand up. Nina Seltzer. John Heller. They're completing 2 years on the committee. Betsy Plume. You're here, Betsy. Great. And Jess Michael. And board liaison, Barbara Welsh. Okay. This fall, we formally asked the congregation to submit members' names to be considered for positions on the board, the nominating committee, and for moderator. We met every 2 weeks. We also approached lay leadership, Reverend John, Dawn Starr, Carolyn Bright, and membership manager. The committee expanded this list with additional names and also members considered in the recent past. We interviewed our top candidates and had follow-up talks. We also spoke with people who had worked on committees with them. Each time, advancing a candidate with follow-up talks, and each time advancing a candidate by committee discussion and quorum agreement. The slate was then presented to the minister and the board leadership. I hope you took the opportunity to read the biographies. They're very interesting of each of these candidates, and they have stepped up to the plate to commit and use their talents. The petitions have been on display in the atrium and on the church website. Each has the required 20 members' signatures, and they have been posted for more than 30 days prior to this meeting. I'm honored to present to the congregation this slate of nominees. Please stand when I call your names and remain standing until I've read the full slate. For the 3 board positions, Jim Covius for a 3-year term. Carrie Nielsen for a 3-year term. Susan Taka for a 3-year term. These are all for the board. For the 2 nominating committee positions, which is also an elected position, Claudia Gard for a 3-year term. Mary Ann Miller Masana for a 3-year term. And for moderator, Gail Burgess for a 1-year term. And we thank her for coming in and being appointed by the board to do the work this year. All right. This completes the slate, and I respectfully submit it to the moderator and the congregation for your vote. Thank you.
We have allotted, thank you, Joanne. Sorry, I should have said that first. We've allotted 5 minutes for questions and discussion before proceeding to vote on the election. We're calling it the election slate of the 6 candidates. Is there any discussion, any questions? Please raise your hand and I'll acknowledge you, if so. All right, without objection, we'll proceed to a vote on the election slate. To reiterate, the election slate of 6 candidates is Carrie Nielsen, Susan Takow, and Jim Covios for the 3 trustees positions for the term ending in 2027, Claudia Gard and Marianne Miller Masana for the 2 nominating committee positions for the term ending in 2027, and Gail Burgess aka me, for the position of moderator for the term which ends in 2025. Those in favor of electing the election slate of 6 candidates to their nominated positions and terms, please hold up your right hand. Thank you. You may lower your hands. Those opposed to the electing the election slate of 6 candidates, please hold up your right hand. To me, it looks unanimous. The ayes have it. All 6 candidates are elected. Congratulations. So we'll now proceed to our last order of business, the ordainment of Carolyn Bright, and our own Reverend John will describe the ordainment process.
It's been our tradition since the Cambridge Platform of 1657, which apparently is something that new ordinands have to know. You can tell I still remember it, which is part of the puritanical tradition, which is a little scary. But anyway, in congregational polities such as ours, the ordination of someone to our ministry, whether it's within a congregation or to the larger Unitarian Universalist ministry, must come from the congregation. Only the congregation has the right to ordain. And therefore, it's before you to ordain Caroline Bright, who's been our ministerial intern these last 2 years, to the Unitarian Universalist ministry. Now, to get to that point, there's really 2 types of ordinations. The one is an internal one that's sometimes done for a minister, a director of music to become minister of music. Relax. You don't really want that. And that's only internal. It's an honorific that someone gives. But to be ordained to the Unitarian Universalist ministry, there's some hurdles you had to jump through, quite a few actually, and they seem to get taller every year. Caroline had to complete her Master's of Divinity, which she has done at Meadville Lombard Theological School. She had to do a 2-year internship, which she has done. And she had to go before the Ministerial Fellowship Committee of the UUA, which is our credentialing body. And they hold quite a bit of power. There's no appeal process. If they said no, she wouldn't come before us. They said yes, and they have, with some slight stipulations, all of which she has now met. So she is completely clear to be ordained, and if you say yes today, we will ordain her in September. I can't remember the exact date. It's been a while, I understand, since you've done an ordination. They are loads of fun. People come, all the ministers process in and all the regalia, and then there's a preacher and there's the laying on of hands, and I mean, it's right up there. So that's it. Hope you say yes, and I'll turn it back over to the moderator.
Thank you, Reverend John. I'll now entertain a motion to authorize the ordainment of Carolyn Bright. Bob?
I move to authorize the ordination of Carolyn Bright.
Thank you. The motion is to authorize the ordainment of Carolyn Bright. Is there a second? So we'll now proceed to vote. All those in favor of authorizing the ordainment of Carolyn Bright, please hold up your right hand. And what the heck, say aye. Aye. Okay. And all those who are opposed, please hold up your right hand. Once again, so the ayes so clearly have it. The motion is adopted, and Carolyn Bright is joyfully authorized to be ordained. Thank you. So I'll just point out, we're 15 minutes ahead of schedule. And what a wonderful way to end this annual meeting. Thanks to our presenters and to all of you for your attendance and participation. Without objection, the meeting is now adjourned. Go in peace and joy.